What's up, domestic dads? Today, I'm beyond excited to bring you a conversation that's equal parts raw, inspiring, and transformative. Joining me on the podcast is Joe Trumbley, a man whose journey from addiction and chaos to purpose and redemption is nothing short of remarkable. Joe is someone who doesn't just talk about recovery, he lives it, breathes it, and he has made it his mission to help others find their way to freedom. I first heard about Joe through the recovery community here in Waterloo. And the more I learned about his story, the more I knew it was one that had to be shared with all of you. Joe's journey is one of resilience and grit, a powerful example of what it looks like to confront the darkest parts of your life and come out stronger, not just for yourself, but for your family and your community. What makes Joe's story so special isn't just the transformation he's undergone, it's his heart for service. He's literally turned his mess into a message, dedicating his life to walking alongside others on their own recovery journeys. Whether it's through his work at Elevate or as a mentor in the recovery community, Joe embodies what it means to be a light in the darkness for those who feel like they're out of hope. Today, Joe and I dive deep into his upbringing, the challenges that led him down the path of addiction, and the incredible turning point that set him on the road to recovery. We talk about everything from importance of accountability and the power of community to the lessons he's learned as a father and a grandfather. His journey is a testament to the fact that no matter how messy life gets, there's always a way to clean it up. And Joe is living proof of that. This episode is packed with heart, wisdom, and practical takeaways I know will resonate with so many of you. So grab a mop because today we're cleaning up the mess. Has life gotten off track? Are you looking for some inspiration to be a better dad? People say all the time, I'd die for my kids. Okay. But would you live for them? Actually live? Get yourself healthy? Make better choices? Eliminate distractions? Would you lead them more intentionally? Would you get sober? Take better care of yourself, physically and mentally. You'd only have to die once. Your kids don't need you to die for them. They need you to live. Have you thought about getting sober, but you just didn't know where to start? If so, welcome to the Domestic Dad Podcast, your go-to destination for candid discussions on journeys into sobriety, parenting, and personal growth. I'm Nick Barnett, founder of the Domestic Dad Project. I've been a dad since I was 18 years old. I'm also a trauma survivor, an alcoholic, divorced, happily remarried, hardworking, humbled by life, domestic dad. On this podcast, you'll find interviews with people who have walked that path, including myself, coaches, mentors, and pastors who can help guide you on your journey. You're going to need resources and inspiration. You can find that here. This is the community for you to lean into so you can start living life as a domestic dad. So let's grab a mop and start cleaning up the mess. If you're in the recovery community, if you've tried to get sober, if you've gone through any programs, if you've gone to any classes, most people in this town know Joe. And they know him for his bluntness. They know him for just being an advocate for people. So it was my honor to reach out to you and ask you to be on this deal. I mean, it's seriously my honor to be able to do this with you, man. So thank you for the work that you're doing in the community and the work that you're doing for people in recovery and supporting them. So
no, it's my honor to be here, man. I appreciate it, Nick.
Yeah. Okay, dude. So so here's how I start this podcast all the time. It's just tell me what childhood was like for you. Where did you come from? Where are you a native to Waterloo, or where did you come from?
I was born in Quezon City, Philippines.
Okay.
In early 70s. And then my mom met my stepdad. I never knew my real dad. So he was a Navy guy, and he's from the Midwest. He was born in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I grew up in the Midwest, Kansas, Nebraska, here. You know, my dad got a job in 82, John Deere's here, and so we found our roots here. You know, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, John Deere tractors.
Yeah, small town. We actually moved. We actually lived in Waterloo, and then my dad found this farmhouse outside of Dunkerton, and that's pretty much where I grew up, was outside of there.
Nice, man.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
beautiful.
What was school like for you when you were growing up?
We moved around a lot until we got to Dunkerton. It was tough. It was cool, but it was tough. It took a long time for me to find my own place in school. Back then, it was a predominantly white, community. Yeah. So I think there was maybe 3 or 4 Asian families in Waterloo. It was me, and then the Evansdale crew that I knew was the Baranobuses. Actually, my mom helped start the Filipino American Association back in the mid 80s, early 90s. So, and that's thriving to this day. It's pretty cool to see. So
interesting connection here. Cliff Baranobus was my brother's basketball coach and a mentor to him for a long, long time.
Yeah,
so when you bring
a really great friend of mine, So,
yeah, that's cool. Okay. So yeah, man. So, what was, as you got older, what was like your work life like? Or actually, before I go there, let me just back up. When did you know that like maybe you had some other stuff going on? When did like the stuff start? Man,
well before I even took my first drink, or well before I even smoked a joint. I knew I was different. Everybody seemed to point that out to me. And it was mostly because of my color, my, how I spoke, because I had a really thick accent for a long time. And so, I knew something I was just different than everybody else. And I tried so hard to be normal like everybody else, but who knows what normal is, but as growing up, I wanted everybody's approval, and I couldn't get it. It was difficult.
Yeah, that's especially when you're in a foreign place, and you don't fit in. I can remember when I was a kid, just wanting to be like one of the cool kids. Yeah. I tried so hard, and I knew that like I was a little bit different too.
Right.
So, but not to the degree that, maybe you were struggling with that. So.
Yeah. The 70s and 80s were a really different time to grow up in. I'd hate to grow up in today's society, being a teenager today, but the 70s and 80s, we weren't culturally appropriate back then.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot of slang and a lot of name calling, and that just kind of chipped at us. And me having a white dad, was really difficult for me. I always, for the longest time, I resented him, man. I resented my real dad. I resented my mom, so I was just building. I was a volcano waiting to explode.
Yeah. Yeah.
Essentially what I was.
Yeah. When did you finally explode?
It just slowly started seeping, and when I was probably 12, 13, maybe 12, before I even went to Florida when my dad got laid off, but I was about 12-ish when we would sneak into town and break into people's garages and steal their beers and things of that nature. Yeah. Growing up, I felt like everybody disliked me. So I had to get into sports. I was a heck of a track runner. I played basketball, and then people seemed to like me a little bit more. But to back up a little bit, he said, how did I know when I was different? Was I used to sit on the bench of the basketball games or the track meets, and I would wait for my parents to show up, and they would never show up.
Oh.
They never came to a game. Never. And I've got a younger brother and a younger sister also. And they started going to my brothers, and then eventually went to everything of my sisters. So, and I understand as I'm older now that there's no parenting guide, universal guide, like an owner's manual that you get out of the car or a motorcycle, So, but after I found recovery, I asked my mom and I said, why weren't you guys ever at my games? I said, I felt like you guys didn't love me. You resented me, and she goes, we only had one car. I was taking care of your brother and your sister. We were living on the farm. Your dad was working 12 to 14 hours a day to put those shoes on your feet. And I finally realized it was the stories that I told myself. Projecting rather than the truth.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I really started feeling inadequate in life.
Yeah. And some of those projections took root and became your reality in the moment, right?
Yeah. It was my reality for the longest time.
Yeah.
And it was crazy what I would tell myself,
Yeah.
And then along with everybody else telling me I'm different and this and that. And so it just kind of, I didn't even really know who I really was, up until my 40s.
Gosh. Yeah. Just lost, man.
Extremely lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, did you go to college or did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Hawkeye.
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah.
I still talk to some of the instructors out there. They're the best.
Yeah. Yeah. When did, so when you started working, like post childhood, when you started working, what was like when you were kind of struggling with all the stuff of, maybe addiction and things of that nature? What was it for you that you struggled with?
Going to work, keeping a job.
Yeah.
I did all kinds of jobs. The funny thing is my dad got laid off in 85.
Yeah.
So we moved to Sarasota, Florida. I went from a class of 28 or 32 to a class of 1,200.
Yeah.
And when I left, I was feeling good. I was actually climbing that ladder, in popularity.
Yeah, stacking some friendships and actually, had a circle, if you will.
Yeah, I did. And then I went to Florida, and then it just I withdrew, man. It was so negative for me. I essentially found some a group, of normal teenagers, I guess, that went out and did, normal teenage stuff, I guess. But that's where I essentially started getting really, really sliding down that slope in life, know? So,
yeah. When you drank or used, what were you like?
Oh man, I was the life of the party. I thought, I think everybody did.
Removes that barrier of which you kept yourself in, or that kind of like shame, if you will. It kind of melts away, and you become like this extroverted version of yourself that you've never expressed before.
Yes. I was the life of the party. I made everybody laugh a little bit more. It was easier to laugh at me, rather than being made fun of. I can make fun of myself now and then feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah.
And it not hurting as much, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a different part of life,
I can remember when I called myself a kid up until I was like 38, 39 years old, because I just did childish things for the entire time, even though I had kids, even though, I was a young adult and I had a job and all that stuff. But back when I was a kid, like, early 20s, I can remember drinking or whatever and looking at myself in the mirror and thinking I like this version of myself better than the sober version of myself, or the old, what I considered the old version of myself, who was more reclusive, if you will.
Right.
Because I felt like I was something different at that point in time. And I don't know, man. I don't love the fact that I did that, but I don't know if you had any experiences like that.
Yeah. Yeah. My friends, I always wake up and my friends, oh, do you remember doing this? Or do you remember? And I'd be like, no, I don't, and they would laugh and we would laugh together and I would feel this tinge of guilt and shame inside of me.
Mm.
But yet I would still continue to do this over and over and over throughout, a majority of my life. And it was just something that I got used to. That's who I thought I was for the longest time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about a time when you were like the most messed up.
It would have to be in Florida.
How old were you?
I was probably 15. So we skipped school and 3 or 4 of my friends, we went out and we went to this pasture and picked mushrooms. And we had brown bag fulls of mushrooms.
Are you talking like psilocybin mushrooms?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fresh ones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fresh ones.
Oh.
And then we went back to my house. You see, now this is a time in my life where I wasn't living with my parents. My dad kicked me out because I ran up a $500 phone bill. And back then we didn't have cell phones, and a $500 phone bill in 85, 86, 87 was pretty expensive, We got physical and then he threw me out of the house. And so I stayed with my best friend and his mom. And so I went out to the field. We picked out all these mushrooms. We went back to my house and we boiled them. And we had probably 5 or 6 gallons of mushroom juice.
Wow.
And I drank probably a 40 ouncer of it. And yeah, it was so intense, man. We got kicked out of an amusement park for laughing so hard. I hallucinated all these ants were on me. And then it was a crazy time. It was a crazy time.
Oh man. I cannot imagine.
Yeah, I've got a lot of crazy war stories like that. But yeah, that was probably one of the better times. There was another time where there was a strip bar outside of Littleton or in Littleton.
I know Littleton. Yeah.
There used to be a strip bar in there.
A gentleman's club.
Yeah. And so we went out there. My buddy just had a brand new just got a truck and we were leaving there. And I was like, "Hey man, you got to let me drive. And we were hammered. And so he let me drive and I almost rear-ended a police car.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Cop in it.
Yeah.
Almost or
yeah.
like
almost. He pulled over to the side and then come around us and then pulled us over and I got pulled over. There's another time, even a worse time, where so I get out of Eldora, the boys training school, and my mom tells me I can't stay there. Dad doesn't want me there. I just wasn't welcome at home, and so I joined the Job Corps in Utah, Salt Lake City. I didn't even make it through orientation. I was there for 2 weeks, got kicked out. Met some girls, ended up staying with them for a few days. And we went out one night and we got so intoxicated. The young lady who owned the car threw me the keys and says, "Hey, can you drive us home?" And I'm like, "Sure." And a quarter mile away from home, all we had to do is cross this ravine and pass this bridge. And I blacked out and hit a tree and launched the tree into a river. Put a girl in a coma for 3 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
I went to jail. I got a scar on my forehead I see every day. Broke my nose and some ribs. Another girl broke her ribs or her leg, and then the other girl just got scratches. So, and that didn't stop me from drinking. I continued. I continued to drink and use drugs.
Yeah.
So,
Oh man. Would you say that that's one of the moments that you regret the most, or is there something else?
Yeah. There's a lot of regretful moments. But that was probably one of the biggest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Wow. That's that's heavy. Did the girl make it? Is she okay?
Yeah. Yeah. She made it. Yeah. I don't know to this day, those girls, I don't remember what their names are.
Yeah.
But I knew while I was sitting in jail that they were okay after I got out. So
yeah. Yeah. So at some point, you got into big trouble, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
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 Walk me through that.
Which time? I stole a car when I was 15 to go back to Florida.
He said which time?
Yeah. So I ended up doing 2 years at Eldora State Training School. Mm-hmm. I went to jail, I don't know how many, numerous times through my 20s and 30s. Caught a couple felonies. One in Kansas, Leavenworth, Kansas. I stole a broken VCR, and the guys hit his pot. But of course, they didn't get me for the pot. They got me for the broken VCR.
Oh my gosh!
So I ended up doing a little time there, and then I come back to Kansas, and then where my uncle lives, and I stayed with him for a while until he got tired of me, and then somehow I made it back here. I got married. This is where my emotional regulation was just terrible growing up, and so I a lot of my charges are either it's violent, domestics, or assaults, or driving while barred or driving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went to prison 2007 till 2011 is when I got out. 2008.
Yeah.
2007, 8, something like that. Tell
me about that. What was that like? What was prison like, man?
Oh man, okay, so they tell me I'm going to gladiator camp, and I'm like, well, what's gladiator camp? Well, one of the TV shows had a big spiel about it, and Fort Dodge. And so I get to Fort Dodge, and I do 2 weeks in the orientation. I get to meet one of the head guys of the Serenos, and great guy. He was actually one of my roommates, and another buddy of mine who lives here in Waterloo was also a roommate of mine. But I hit the yard, I get a job, and then this young guy comes to me and he says, "Joe, man, this group of guys is trying to extort me, and I put my nose into something I probably shouldn't have, and ended up going to the hole. They jumped me, and they let me out 30 days later after shutting the yard down. And then I get out. They send a couple more guys at me, which I was ready for that time. And then they send me back to the hole.
So you're just kind of a marked man anytime that you get out of there.
Yeah. So they eventually said, "Joe, you can't be in this camp. You got an old mentality. This is a young camp. We're going to send you to Fort Madison."
Okay.
Yeah. So I did a year in the hole, and then I get to Fort Madison. Then I spend a couple of months, couple weeks, I think it was about a month behind the walls. And then they showed me love and let me out in the backyard, which was a fenced-in yard, 20-foot fence. And that's where I flourished there. I started hustling there, and my street mentality got me to, do some things in there that I probably shouldn't be doing, but that's what I did to survive.
Yeah.
And then I got out of there. My my mom came and picked me up with a bunch of Filipino ladies, and then took me back to Dunkerton. And then my dad came and picked me up, and him and my mom were divorced at the time, but he had a cabin in Texas. So we went to Texas.
Yeah.
For about 3 months. And then I started talking to my wife. Now I've known her for 30 years.
Really?
Yeah. She's actually pretty awesome.
Shout out to Joe's wife.
Yeah. Nina, I love you. She was dating one of my close friends in my 20s. And they had 3 kids, and they called me Uncle Joe for a long time, Uncle Jojo. And then now they call me stepdaddy. It's pretty funny, but yeah. And then lo and behold, she's been my ride or die since, till now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know what real unconditional love was. I mean, my mom and my dad kind of showed it to me, but they limited that love. She's amazing, dude. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about her.
So you came out of prison, you get down to Texas, and then you finally reconnected with Nina.
Yep.
Yeah. And what did that look like for you after everything that you had gone through at that point? Was it did it look like freedom for you? Like, was it?
Well, actually, it was, my history with women is really bad.
Okay.
And so I'm so codependent on them.
Yeah.
And in the 3 years that I did in the joint, I get out and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to find, somebody. But I kept telling myself, I'm going to find somebody stable. I'm going to find somebody with a good job. I'm going to do this. Lo and behold, she has, she
checks all the boxes.
Yeah. She checked them all. And when we started talking, I was like, yeah, I can't date you. You're going out with, one of my closest friends, and she's like, no, I haven't seen him for 2 years. And I was like, oh, really? And so then it kind of flourished from there.
Yeah.
She says, hey, you can come stay up here. We don't even have to be in a relationship or anything like that. I've got an extra room, whatever. And so I came back.
Did you stay in the extra room?
No, sure did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, did you guys have any more kids, or just the 2 that she had previously?
She has 3 previously. I have 4 on my own.
Oh, okay.
So let me tell you about
tell me about that, Dad.
Okay. So usually when I introduce myself to everybody, I tell myself, hey man, I'm a 4-time felon. I'm a 4-time deadbeat dad. I've got 4 kids by 4 different women. 2 of the women are sisters. My 2 oldest kids are 2.5 weeks apart. So this is who I am.
Yeah.
I screwed up my life pretty good. I screwed up my kids' lives really, really good. I don't think I've raised them, any of them, for more than a weekend in their lives. I was always screwed up. I was always either drunk or high, and it's tough. I have a really good relationship with my oldest daughter. And the other 3 kids, my youngest son doesn't know who I am. And he lives, I think, in Rhinebeck.
Yeah.
My other 2 kids, one of them is in Kentucky and one's here in Waterloo, who doesn't want to speak to me either. And that's maybe why subconsciously I used to use a lot, because I was I knew I was a failure.
Regret, shame.
Yeah.
That stuff gets on you. And I could go on and on about those things and the reasons that I used, but I think at the end of the day, the reason I tried to sedate so hard with alcohol in my own journey was because of the regrets, because of the things that I regretted. And I would drink and I would try to make it go away. And the crazy thing about it, man, is that it's at some point when you get sober, it's all going to come out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's
all going to come out. And hopefully you are in motion when it does, because you don't want to be sitting still when that happens.
Right.
I was a big runner at, like, post sobriety. I was like, I got to go for a run. And it was on those runs or walks or like, you know, morning jogs or whatever they were, that like most of the time I'd just be drowning in tears, man.
Yeah. I was drowning in guilt and shame for the longest time. And I would wake up in bed and just yell at God, hate the world, and tell God, why am I here? Why do you keep me here? You know, and it was a difficult conversation, because every time I would ask for help, God would, I would hear, every time I asked for help from God, I would hear the doors of prison shutting, or the clanking of the handcuffs around my wrists, and that wasn't the help I wanted, you know, but that's the help He gave me.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't realize that He kept me around for a reason, and I'm still wondering what it is. But now I wake up and I'm like, all right, what kind of chaos are we getting into today, man?
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. Pastor Q was on here last week, and
I love Q.
yeah, and he made a great comment. I love quoting him too, because he's just got so many like things that just hit. He said, if you're not dead, God's not done.
Yep. And
that is the truth, man. And God gives us opportunities to be obedient and trust Him. And you know, sometimes we just have to be submissive to that. All the time we have to be submissive to that. And once we become submissive to that, I think He starts working in your life and showing you what He's been stewing up for you. Because Joe, I mean, as much as you may have considered yourself not a good enough dad, you're probably ready to be that at this point in time. And you've shown that kind of fatherhood to other kids and other people, and what you're going through now and what you've done, like as of work in this community today, is a result of all of the lessons that you have learned over that time. You know, like, God, what are you doing this to me for? To put something in you.
Yep. Yeah.
That was so difficult to get through. And when you got through it, you could show people what that light looks like on the other side.
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's what it is. You know, probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago, my stepdaughter left my granddaughter with us, 2 of them. And the other grandparents took the younger one, and we took Peyton, and I've been raising her since then. She's 15. She'll be 16 in March. She's also one of my guiding lights. You know, she's absolutely, she keeps me on my toes, you know? So, and so God gave me that opportunity to help raise a child. And I've never had that ever, you know, and He's also blessed me with 14 grandkids. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So my God is he's a comedian to me, you know, because growing up, I told myself, you know, hey, society said, hey, you know, women at the time, 50s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s, said women should only be at home. Mm-hmm. You know, they should clean, they should do this, they should cook, take care of the kids. You know, and God says, no, that's not true. And me being as with so many different women, you know, God says, you know,
that was a serious vice for you.
Yeah, that was really bad for me. You know, that was another addiction. Yeah, was women, and God finally says, hey, man, I'm gonna challenge your thought process, and I'm gonna give you granddaughters. Now, what do you think of that? You know, and I'm like, oh my God, you know. So now I'm
literally,
literally, I'm like, okay. I tell them all, you're just as good, if not any better, than any of these boys. You don't need any of these boys. Yeah, you know, use your head, and they'll come to you eventually. But don't even worry about them nowadays, you know, because I remember being my granddaughter's age and chasing just all kinds of girls.
Yeah.
So and thank God she's so bright and she's into her sports now, which is wrestling right now. So and she enjoys that. So
you got she's a wrestler?
Yeah, she just started wrestling this year.
What school?
Well, it's East, but they combined it with West.
Yeah, let's go.
It's absolutely amazing, dude.
It is.
Absolutely.
No, I love the fact that they have developed women's wrestling in the state, and this state is the one, right?
Yeah,
like it really is the one that's was going to pioneer that, and it's so cool that these young gals are out on the mat and gritting it out like that.
Oh man, I love it. It's absolutely amazing to see her out there enjoying herself, and it hurts, the last match, it kind of twinged inside because she came off the mat twice and she was crying. But I was like, hey, it's okay,
Do you know what kind of character that's building though on the inside?
Yeah.
That's I think the best lesson that wrestling teaches us is kind of the concept of the man in the arena, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is those whose faces are marred with dust and blood and sweat and tears that, they're not going to suffer the consequence of not trying and not going out there. They can hold themselves up here knowing that they went for it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Not among the meek, but among the champions of the world that went out there and did it.
Exactly. So what was great about this last meet, she went 0-3.
Yeah.
It was tough. But the best part was at the end, the senior come up to her that's on her team and she says, hey, good matches, it's okay. She goes, but you did win. You went out there on the mat. And this is from her teammate. And I was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. Because 2 weeks prior to that, Peyton wrestled that senior who wrestles, varsity, and she also wrestles college girls. And Peyton pinned her in 48 seconds, the same girl. And I was like, absolutely amazing to hear her come up to Peyton and give her a hug and say, hey, man. Yeah. And that's what teammates, that's what that team dynamic is about. And I seen it there this last match. But earlier this spring, I got to coach for softball. Mm-hmm. And this is the first year I've ever coached. And the team that I coach it's mixed league, my granddaughter and her friends, and then some boys. And we won the tournament and league. And I was just an embellished, cheerleader.
Yeah.
It was absolutely amazing. I didn't even have to.
Were you on the mat yelling and screaming?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Half.
Yeah.
On your toes.
Yeah. So she's got me to do things that I have yet to ever think I would ever do. And I tell my clients that all the time is I'm like, put yourself in a positive, uncomfortable position in order for you to grow. There's no growth in the comfort zone and no comfort in the growth zone. So go out there and do something positive.
Those are wise words.
So I live by those words, man. A friend of mine in the recovery told me that, and I've stuck to that for years.
Yeah, those are solid, man. There's no growth in the comfort zone.
No, not at all.
And there's no victory in I should have.
Yep.
There was so many times that, I'd drink and drink and drink. And I'd tell myself I was going to get sober, and then I'd quit for, a week, 2 weeks. And then I'd go back and I'd drink. And then I'd look at the calendar and I'd be like, I could have been sober for 3 months. You know what I mean? But I made poor decisions and I went for it. I should have. There's no victory in that. You know what I mean? Right. There's none. You got to go for it. You got to do it. Put in the work. Get uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
And yeah.
I've never put that goal. We've all said, I'm not going to drink this weekend. I'm not going to, but I've always changed that vice to something else. I'll just smoke a little pot, I'll do a little meth, and then we do that for extreme amount of times. And then we're like, whew, I'll just go back to drinking,
Yeah.
And essentially it was a vicious circle, for me. And then And then, of course, the pills, were a big part of my life.
Painkillers?
Yeah.
I struggled with that as well.
Yeah, oxys and perks were really bad for me.
Yeah. Started with a thrown out back for me, like a back spasm. Went to the doc, got some Vicodin. My wife at the time had just had a C-section, and she had oxycodones for the C-section pain. And I tried one, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the doctor, and instead of the Vicodin, I'm going to try to get the Percocets or whatever they were, And that's kind of where that all took off for me. That was a terrible, terrible.
Yeah.
It took a terrible grip on my life, man.
Yeah. Well, the last time, so I'm clean and sober 9.5 years.
Yeah.
Right towards the end for that last year, I would wake up at 2-3 in the morning and do a shot of meth, because my wife was sleeping. Supposedly she didn't know. So I would wake up early in the morning, do a shot of meth, and then smoke a joint. Probably if I had a beer, drink a beer, and pop a couple pills. And then I would go to work at 6:30. And it would just, all through the day, 9 o'clock, I'd smoke a joint, pop a couple pills. Noon, I might do a little bit more meth, drink a little bit for lunch, come home, not eat anything, and then drink and smoke pot so I could go to sleep, and then it would start all over. It was just a vicious circle.
Whoa.
For months.
Wow. What did you struggle with like some mental health stuff?
Oh yeah.
In the thick of all that?
Yeah.
Because when I was at my worst and I was drinking, like at the end, I got into a pretty dark place, man. I didn't think I thought everybody else that I knew in this world would be better off without me, my kids, my wife, my parents. I was just a burden. I just felt like such a burden,
Yep. That's exactly what I was a burden. I was a cancer in society, or at least I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to fix myself, and nobody knew how to fix me either. But yeah, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, anxiety, of course. I think everybody is, PTSD. And later on, I was diagnosed with drug-induced schizoaffective disorder.
Yeah.
Because there for the longest time when I was on meth, I was seeing the shadow people. I was literally, it was so bad. My brother was getting remarried to his high school sweetheart. And I was literally outside, weather like this. I think it was January, maybe February. I was outside cutting limbs out of my tree because I thought people were staring or spying on me, and I literally fell out of the tree and messed my face up on his wedding day, so I couldn't even go to his wedding. Yeah, it was.
Was that the inciting incident?
No.
Okay.
No. My dad passed away in 2011 or 2012. We buried him on 11/11/11 or 11/11. That's Veterans Day. But he was born June 28th, and that week, you see, me and my brother and I never really talked about feelings, and I was one of the.
Oh, you weren't brought up to.
Yeah, we weren't.
That goes back to the tool bag that your parents give you, right?
Yep,
that
right.
family of origin stuff. If you weren't taught to talk about your feelings, then it's really foreign to do it.
Yeah. And if I cried in front of my dad, my dad would say, well, why are you crying? Do you need me to give you a reason to cry? And, who's just a man's man. And so when my dad passed, my dad's death date and my dad's birth date are extremely important to me. And both, when I was in active addiction, that week, I essentially would get, screwed up. I mean, extremely.
On his death date.
Yep.
So in November was a triggering month for you.
November was a triggering month, and then June was a triggering month. And my brother and I would, there for a while, we'd call each other and be like, "Yep, you taking a day off?" And I was like, "I took the week off."
Yeah.
Okay. And then that week of June 28th, 2015, I tried committing suicide 3 times.
Yeah.
So I took all my pills and woke up in a pile of puke. Second time, a friend of mine's, one of my friends that I grew up with, his son played that pass out game.
Yep.
You know how they tie something around their neck and then they make themselves pass out. Well, I tied my granddaughter's belt around my neck and tried doing that, and it didn't work. I broke the belt, face was all messed up. And then the third time, my wife was coming to pick up the last of her stuff. Because by this time, she took Peyton away from me. I lost my business, my tools, everything, the house. Power was being turned off. And that last time, my wife asked me, "Why can't you just quit?" And I told her I was going to. And took her out on Airline Highway and stepped off of a tree limb with a rope around my neck. So I went to the psych unit earlier that week too. And then when I woke up, I found myself in the psych unit again. And the psychiatrist was like, "You're not going anywhere. You're going to treatment," So that's where my recovery started, and
let's go.
Yeah. Well, actually, me being an addict, tried manipulating my way out.
Of course you did.
That first week in treatment, I was like, yeah, vaguely talking about things. And then somebody called me out and I got mad. And I went to my room and come back out. And then there's family group. And I didn't think my family was going to show up. My family showed up, and there was nothing but let's beat up Joe for the next 2 hours, and it sucked. It sucked. So I went back to my room and I bawled my eyes out, and this is where I spoke to God and says, "I'm tired of asking you for help, because I don't want to go to prison, I don't want to go to jail, and that's what you normally do, and I don't know what to do." And I turned around, and lo and behold, was the little blue book of Narcotics Anonymous basic text. And I turned it to page 90. I opened it up and it flipped open, I think, to page 91 or 92. And it said in there, it says, "You're not responsible for your disease." And I was like, "Oh my God, I got a disease. Oh my God."
Yeah, dude.
So give me some pills. I'll take 6 of them, And the funny part is right after it says, "But you are responsible for your recovery." And I was like, damn, I've never been responsible for anything in my life.
Yeah.
And that's where I took off. I cut my hair off and then got out of treatment. My best friend was sitting on my stoop with a 6-pack of beer, a lit joint, and a pocket full of pills. My wife was madder than hell. She was extremely mad.
What'd you say to him?
I looked at her and I said, "Hey man, I think it was a Tuesday." And I said, "Yo, bro, I got 16 days clean. I think I'm going to try this thing out for a little bit. Keep that stuff. Because come back Friday and I'll probably do it Friday." I jumped in my car and smoked a half-pack cigarettes, drove around a meeting. The closest meeting to me, it wasn't open yet. So I drove around the block for like 45 minutes. And then I happened to look over. Sure enough, I seen somebody that I used to walk the yard with in prison. And I get out of prison, or I get out of the car and I said, "Hey." And he's like, "JoJo."
Yeah.
He gave me a big hug and I said, "Is this where?" And he's like, "Yeah, this is where NA's at." And I started laughing. He started laughing and I was like, "Dude." I said, "I got 16 days clean." And he's like, "Awesome." I said, "How many days clean you got?" And he pulled his girlfriend over and she was pregnant. And he nudged her and says, "Hey, how many, JoJo wants to know how many days clean we got. And she goes, 9 months. And I was like, heck yeah. For some reason that clicked with me. And I said, I think I can do this because, my boy's here.
Yeah.
And I never turned around.
Did you have a lot of conversations with that guy after that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For the longest time. Unfortunately, he went back out and relapsed.
Yeah.
And I still see him every once in a while and beg him to come back,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, isn't it crazy how the game changes when you have an accountability partner?
Yeah.
In recovery?
Yeah.
When you got somebody that you can lean into and like kind of talk about what you're going through and kind of get it off your chest and you're not sitting with it. Because when you sit with all of your, like, I just want to use, or I just want to drink, or I want to do this or that. Like, eventually you're going to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But if you got somebody to express it to and say, man, I'm going through this.
Yep.
This is hurting me, man down.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm going through it, dude. And for somebody to be there for you, that's also going through it and say, no, man, we got this together.
Yep.
That changes everything. I always advocate to people who want to get sober. Strangers will call me. I'll get messages on Facebook. I'll get a text message out of the blue from an old friend. And they'll say, dude, what do we got to do here? I said, you got to get an accountability partner. If you need one, I'll be it. But I'm probably a lot further in my recovery than what you are right now. And you should find somebody that's close, that's going through it now. You know what I mean? Because you got to be able to share your experiences. Because if you don't talk about it, I mean, that's why they tell you hit 100 meetings in 100 days, because you're going to find people in those meetings. And it was people in those meetings, people in the what's it called? What is Pathways and what does Elevate do? They have a program.
Treatment? Substance use treatment program?
Yeah.
Outpatient?
Outpatient. What is outpatient called?
Intensive outpatient.
Yeah, IOP. Yeah. So in the IOP rooms and things like that you go into, I mean, when I first went to IOP, and I use Pathways, by the way, it was, I called and I was like, listen, I got a problem. And they were like, hey, we'll do an evaluation. Come in. I came in and they were like, you might want to go in treatment for what you are going through. Like, I was shaking. I couldn't talk. I couldn't text. I couldn't email.
Right.
You know what I mean? My brain was just mush from all the booze. And so the next thing I had to do was meet with a counselor. And then the counselor was like, here's your options. We can go inpatient or you can do like an outpatient deal. Cause I was like, dude, I'm not going inpatient. There's no way I'm not doing that. I was very adamant. I wasn't going to do that for one reason or the other. I think I just wasn't comfortable with that.
Right.
And I think a lot of people aren't, and you don't have to.
A lot of people aren't. Yeah. There's so many different ways to recover.
Yeah.
But
she was like, if you want to do IOP, it's 3 days a week and it's 3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours a session. And then she was like, and you got to meet with me on Fridays. And I was like, holy smokes, that's a commitment.
It is.
So I was like, I don't know about this. And I was going to try to wiggle my way out of it. You know what I mean? So I come home and I'm talking to my wife and I'm like, listen, this is a lot. And I don't know that I want to be away from you for that long. Cause I was codependent. You know what I mean? Like I need to be around you. I don't want, I want you to leave me.
Yeah.
I want to be with the kids and this and that. And she was like, hey man, my wife, I'll never forget it. She said, you can't help anybody until you help yourself. You can't be the father you want to be. You can't be the friend you want to be. You can't be the husband you want to be until you help yourself. So you need to go do that. And so it was like, green light. Let's go.
Wise words from a woman. Yeah. Wise words.
Yeah. It wasn't, hey, yeah, you're right. Don't go. Don't be around, other people who are going through. I want you back. It was like, no, you go. You need to go. You need to go get that done. Because if they say it works, but do it. Yeah. So I did. And I made a lot of friends, in that process. I made a ton of, I still remember every single person that was in that first IOP group first and only really IOP group that I ever did. And that built my foundation. That many meetings and that consistently really gave me a foundation. And I was kind of like, dude, I've logged all this time of going to these meetings and learning about, my addiction and learning about what all this was. And it was so aha at the end of it. And you start participating in the conversations and people are opening up and asking questions and everybody gives feedback. And it was like, this this is like medicinal for me. This is what I needed. These are the conversations I've needed to have for decades. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just think that there's a lot of value in accountability partners and knowing other people that are going through it at that point in time.
Exactly. You know, I tell everybody that too, you know, is my clients, my IOP, I'm like, hey man, I want you guys to know each other. I want you guys to friend each other, you know, exchange your phone numbers. You know, I want you guys to go out to coffee, call each other when you're having a great day.
Yeah.
And because it makes it so much easier when they're having a bad day.
Yeah.
You know, and it works, you know, staying in touch, communicating is really big. And the withdrawing is something that we're normal to, or we're used to. And like I said, man, we got to be uncomfortable. Pull us out of that. The 90 meetings, 90 days, find a home group, find a sponsor. Absolutely amazing. Service work, you know, NA is really a big part of my recovery in my life. However, in the position that I work, NA isn't the only way to do it. You know, 12 steps are absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
But you know, research is showing harm reduction works now too.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many different ways.
Peer groups are huge. Yeah.
We have a absolutely amazing peer recovery support center in where I work. The funny thing is one of the very first meetings I ever went to, a gentleman came in and he picked us up from Horizons, and we get these meeting lists and we write, you know, guys write their numbers on it and girls for theirs. I still carry my first meeting list.
Yeah.
You know, and I whip it out every once in a while. I got my wallet wet, I don't know, 5 years ago, and I lost it or something like that. I freaked out. I didn't care about the license. I didn't care about my social security card. I didn't care about anything else in my wallet but that meeting list.
Yeah.
And it's all ripped to shreds and everything. But I busted it out earlier this week and shown the guy who actually I work with, one of my closest friends, and I showed it to him, and we looked down the list, and we were like, "Oh yeah, I remember him." And so it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's magical, man. That really is, because when you go through something that's so dark and so hard, and you remember the other people's journeys, because they share.
Yeah.
Everybody's sharing, being open.
Yeah.
You know, I can remember I was like, at one point in time, I was so embarrassed of this. I was like, hey man, I was in like that IOP group, and I was like, hey, have y'all ever been like throwing up and then shit your pants at the same time? And everybody's hands went up. And they were like, oh, we done that. Yeah, we done that. It's like, oh really? I'm not the only one.
Right. Yeah. That's amazing. That's so cool.
But yeah, it was a very funny moment. But it's moments like that you go through, and you just get raw and honest about the things that you've been through and what your drug of choice has done to you, and everybody else can kind of relate to that.
Right.
You're not going to get that anywhere else in the world.
Nope. And these are my people. You know, I frequent the NA rooms as not as much as I used to in the beginning, but I still frequent them regularly. And there's a couple meetings that I chair. You know, the Horizons meeting on Sunday, every Sunday except the third Sunday. Another group comes in, but something that I have to do. I have to give back, because NA gave me so much. It gave me my hope back, and faith, and it gave me the opportunity to have a different perspective on life.
Yeah. And dude, those are all things that you need to have in your life. You have no idea how much you needed them until you find them. And you're like, this is what I've been missing.
Yeah. This
is what I needed, you know? And I think that's why I do this podcast, is because it's my way to kind of give back, you know, conversations like this one, sharing with people, you know, the fact that we've all gone through some really hard stuff that would make your skin crawl, things that if I really look back on it, like make me like go, oh, you know, but in going through that stuff, it turns us into the people that we are today.
Yeah.
And while we don't have some of the greatest experiences, we have some of the greatest lessons.
That's where it's at. It's all the lessons, you know, and some of us have to, I had to go through the same thing over and over and over and over again in order for me to learn from it. And then I'm like, man, why did it take me so long to understand? Man, I just didn't need to do it this way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm hard-headed like that.
Me too. Me too. It took me so long. Yeah. What's your favorite part about being a dad, Joe?
A grandpa?
Yeah.
I give my that's a good question. My dad was never a bad guy.
Yeah.
And he had this dry humor. And he always tells dad jokes, or used to all the time. Yeah. And we would always travel, you know, to Nebraska or Kansas and then back to Waterloo. And so I tell a lot of dad jokes. Like every time I drive by a cemetery, I'm like, hey, you know what they call the middle of that place? My granddaughters will roll their head and shake their eye, you know, roll their eyes and shake their head and be like, yeah, dead centered. We know, JoJo. You know, and I'm like, you know why they put fences up around them? And they're like, yeah, people are dying to get in there. You know,
I'm sorry.
I love giving my girls and my sons, my grandsons, a hard time, because my dad always did with me. You know, I think one of the most memorable times I'm ever going to have is the conversation I had with my granddaughter 2 weeks ago. The day she lost those 3 matches. And her coming off of there, she cried the first 2 matches, and she got in the car, and I said, hey, I respect you. And she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, I respect you, because it takes a lot of balls to just walk out there on those mats and wrestle somebody you totally don't even know. And she's like, yeah, I said, that's pretty courageous. And she's like, yeah, it is. The next day, my coworker said, hey, ask your granddaughter who her idol is. And so I texted her, and she said, you are. Oh man. It puts that frog in my throat just saying that, you know. And I told her, I says, you don't have to say that, you know. And she goes, no, you are. And that's the relationship I have with her. I wish here's one of my regrets is I wish I could have built this kind of relationship with my kids that I have with her.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. But at some point you might be able to. And it also makes you appreciate the relationship that you have with her.
Oh
that much more.
Yeah, it does. You know, like I said, it's me, her, and my wife. We do everything together, and then my wife doesn't. Like last year, we were out at Big Woods Lake, and we went kayaking. It was just me and her, and she's like, "Where are we going?" And I said, "We're going all the way over there." And she's like, "Oh no, that's too far." And we ended up past where I was even looking at, and it was a good time. She enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You know, she was like, "This is so much fun." And
yeah,
just those moments, you know, teaching her things. I taught her how to ride a motorcycle.
Yeah.
You know,
what's the happiest memory you have with her?
Oh man, I could show you all these pictures. Actually,
That's a tough one to pin down, isn't it?
It is, man. It is. When my wife retired, the funny thing is my wife worked at CenturyLink for 17 years.
Yeah.
And they outsourced her job to the Philippines. My cousins.
Yeah.
That's what I say. You're still feeding my family, but she got a severance pay, and we went and bought a Honda Odyssey van, and we just took a vacation. And my two, we went to the Omaha Zoo, and at the time, my granddaughter was 5, and the other one was maybe 4, and we took them to their first 3D movie, and I snapped a shot of these two, and they both looked at me. One of them had their glasses on like this, with their mouth open. The other one had their glasses sideways and looking at me. And I think that was one of the funniest moments of my life. Because
it's wrapped up in light and love, right?
Yeah, it was, but there are times where I take Peyton and I'm like, hey, you want to go to our favorite spot? And she'd be like, oh, okay. And we go to the ice cream shop, Four Queens in Evansdale.
Yeah.
Or I'd be like, hey, you want to go for a ride on the motorcycle? And she'd be like, yeah. And then I got another one, and so I taught her how to do that. There are so many memories that I just enjoy, man,
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want or wish most for her?
To be happy.
Yeah.
Just to be happy in regards whatever she wants to do in life, and I just hope she remembers to give her grandkids a hard time like I give mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that you want them to always remember after you're gone?
How much fun I was, I think, and how strong I was. They know what I do for a living, and they know they frequent the meetings with me. I hope they carry that kind of legacy and wanting to help others. And I've seen, actually, my granddaughter Peyton. She's a really big participant or volunteer in the teen support peer recovery group we have at Elevate. So she's there every Tuesday night after wrestling, and before wrestling started, she was always there. So talking to all the other teenagers and just being herself.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Authenticity is the best thing when it comes to kids, when they're not trying to be something else or fit a square peg into a round hole. They're just being authentically themselves, and you get to see them in that light, and you're like, it's amazing to see that,
Yeah. And she's usually such a secluded person. She's so quiet, as she was growing up, she was just been really quiet, and to see her open up and volunteer and talk to other kids at this thing is really, really pretty inspirational.
Well, it sounds like you're planting good seeds in her, and she's seen you in action and knows what she wants to do and knows how she wants to be. And that's huge, man. That's huge. What's your biggest accomplishment since getting sober?
Being a good grandpa and a husband, I think. I would have to say that. I mean, I got my bachelor's in social work, and I've got a beautiful job, and I've got a beautiful home, and I got all the materialistic things, but I think being able to be me, who I truly am supposed to be, it's an amazing thing, because I had no self-esteem.
Yeah.
I had no confidence in who I was. Everything I touched turned to shit. I was that guy. And I try to instill in everybody I talk to or that I work with is we're going to build you from the inside out. You know, here's where we're going to put glue together. We're going to glue you back together, and you're going to be more valuable now than what you were before.
Yeah.
And that goes with self-affirmations. That's the first thing I tell everybody in my groups when they start. Here's a packet of self-affirmations. Take this. Pick out 3, write it on a Post-it note, and take it home. Post it on your refrigerator, or your mirror, wherever, your oven, your bedroom door, wherever you're going to see it consistently.
Yep.
And then take a picture of it and send it to me so I know it. And throughout the months that we're together, I'm going to just randomly ask you, hey, what are your affirmations? Yeah. And if they rattle them off like that, and a majority of them do, then I know they're practicing it. And that builds that self-confidence.
Is that the advice that you'd give somebody today?
Oh, yeah.
That was thinking about getting sober, is get yourself some affirmations, or is there something else that you'd give them?
I tell them I'd ask them first off is what's recovery look like to you?
Yeah.
Recovery looks different to everybody. Me, it's abstaining from all mind-altering substances.
Yep.
Some people, younger kids might be like, well, I'm not going to quit drinking. I'm only 19, 20 years old. I got a whole lifetime. Well, then maybe we should learn some responsible drinking habits, or I love to tell everybody we need to quit looking at what's wrong with addiction and start looking at what's right with it. Because why are we can name all the negative stuff on it. Well, let's name some of the right stuff with it. It immediately takes away, the fear and anxiety. It makes us feel a lot better. Instant gratification.
Temporarily.
Yeah. After we name these good things, then we have to realize for that individual is, why don't you have those good things in your life right now?
Yeah.
So let's figure that out.
Way to wrap it back around there.
Yeah. Let's figure it out. Why do you need this? Why aren't you happy? Oh, so you're stressed out? Okay. All right. It's understandable. I've been there.
Yeah.
Are there alternatives?
Yeah.
Can we practice a little breathing? Maybe a little mindfulness.
Yeah. Some box breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell everybody box breathing, 5-7-8 method. I love doing the mindfulness is well, you can't do it now because the snow's on the ground, but I take my clients out to the Lincoln Park and I make them shed their shoes and socks. And I'm like, let's walk around. Let's
get on the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite ones, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, coping skills. I got a pocket full of coping skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just so all the listeners know, you work at Elevate
CCBHC, downtown Waterloo.
So if you are struggling with addiction
and mental health, we got a therapist there. We also have a prescriber. We have a peer support drop-in center. We own 2 buildings on the corner of Mulberry and 4th Street. Like I said, we have therapists. We have some addiction counselors there. Whatever you're looking for, if you need any help, we're there to help out Monday through Thursday from 8:30 to 6, and then Fridays from 8:30 to noon. We also have mobile crisis responders.
Yeah.
We work with Your Life Iowa 988. We've got an embedded social worker that actually has his own car and cruises around and helps a lot of people out. We try to stay in touch with or work with everybody in the community.
Yeah.
It's absolutely an amazing thing. It started in 2020, August of 2020, I think. and I came on in end of January 2021. I'm blessed. I'm blessed to be able to start the substance use program there. I was asked. I interviewed, and when I got there, they're like, I'm like, so what's this program about? And they're like, well, you're creating it. And I was like, what? And so, we created it. I started the IOP group, and it was at one time EOP, but it's now just outpatient group, early intervention, teens, and we just started PHP. So PHP is day treatment. So essentially, if you go to inpatient treatment, do your 30 days there, you could go to do PHP for 2 weeks, and then jump into our IOP program, which lasts about 8 to 10 weeks. And then it's outpatient for as long as you want.
Yeah.
As long as you want. I've had my partner, Kelsey, and I have had clients that's been in treatment for a year and a half. They just come back to groups every once a week, and just it's their safe space.
Yeah, it's mainly for that's their community, if you will. That's where they get to, find accountability partners and talk about what's going on in their lives and things like that. I think that's incredible because many of the IOP programs that are out there are like 2 months, right? Yeah. And then it's kind of a drop off. And then if you don't have a support system after that, you kind of fall back into the abyss is what I've found from a lot of people. And some folks, love AA, NA, and some people they're just not going to do it. They're hardwired to not want to do that. And when they lose kind of those IOP programs, or when they come out of them, it's like, okay, well, I don't have to do that anymore. Got that checked off my list. What am I going to do next? And they typically end up back in relapse.
Right. So the funny thing is I've had this gentleman. I was getting ready to discharge him, and we're having this conversation. And I said, "Hey, I'm going to discharge you." And he's like, looks at me, and he's in a serious face, and he says, "Joe, I've been drinking for 30 some years."
Yeah.
And he goes, "You think 8 months of treatment is going to cure me?" And I looked at him and I said, that's a good point. That's a really good point. And he's been continuing to come to groups, once a week, if not twice a week, since then. And I've had him for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you come as much as you want.
That's incredible, man. That really is, because nobody wants to go into the abyss alone.
Right.
You got to keep that going. Dude, you are an absolute Superman inside of our community, inside of the recovery community. And I'm very blessed to know you and have you as a resource. I know I called you the other night when I was getting ready to go do an intervention with another friend of mine,
Right. How'd that turn out?
Well, he's in treatment. So
good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I'm glad to hear.
A lot of the advice that you gave me was very applicable. So it was awesome. Yeah. So any last piece of advice that you would give the listeners if they're either struggling with mental health or struggling with addiction? How
bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Because you got to do some things that you normally most likely haven't done yet. And unfortunately, you're going to be really uncomfortable, and recovery isn't, here's what I tell everybody is recovery isn't, unicorns farting glitter, jumping over rainbows.
Yeah. It's still hard.
Yeah. And it's going to be tough, man. Recovery gives you the possibility of dealing with hard situations differently.
Well,
and if you are serious about it, come find me, man. Come find somebody. There's somebody who's willing to listen to you and help you.
Yeah.
And that's where it's at, and it's so hard to determine, is it the mental health that causes substance use, or is it substance use that causes the mental health?
I think it's the latter most of the time.
I think, they both go hand in. I think they're both separate hands on the same body.
Yeah.
So let's deal with it together. You don't have to do it alone. And if my way doesn't work for you, then there's a couple different other ways you can do it. But I'm gonna challenge you quite often, and I challenge a lot of my clients all the time. And it's just an amazing journey, and I'd love to help you. I'd love to walk that road of recovery with you.
Yeah.
There's no dead end to it. It's lifelong, and unfortunately, it's the scary part is it's the same distance to the ditch.
Yeah.
On both sides, so you got to keep going straight, man.
Oh, those are wise words, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always like to tell people, there is no mess that's too big to clean up. You can always do it.
Amen.
It's always possible. There's a big, bright future for you here, no matter how much mess you've got around you.
Right. I was a pretty messy person. I still am, if you ask my wife, from my side of the room. But I could laugh a lot more now at myself.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Recovery is where it's at. That's the cool thing nowadays.
Yep.
Come check us out. It's you'll love it. Give it a chance.
Yeah. Right on. Thanks, Joe.
Anytime, man.
Appreciate your time, brother.
I appreciate you. God bless you.
Yeah. God bless you as well. See ya.
Awesome.
If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you with all my heart. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us out. If you have questions about getting sober, parenting, or personal growth, email Nick at domesticdadproject.com with any questions about cleaning up the messes you've made. And if your question is discussion worthy, we'll feature it in an upcoming episode. Don't forget, you can watch any of these videos uncut and unedited, filmed in my studio from our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Domestic Dad Project. Also, please follow us on Facebook or share this episode on your social media. You can also join our community by grabbing some merch. It means the world to me to know that this podcast is making a difference in someone's life. And if this episode inspired you to get sober or simply become a better version of yourself, you can claim your free 60-minute coaching session by visiting www.domesticdadproject.com. Let's continue supporting each other to break the stigma around dads reaching out for help to get our lives on track while navigating the obstacles of fatherhood. Until next time, keep cleaning up the mess.